Okay, we're back. I'm gonna do a new format where I'm starting with my hands because I talk too much and my videos will keep getting too long. So we're gonna go and start with my hands, and then you'll see my face. But not that anyone cares. But you know, we're just changing things. Okay, I make long reviews. But let's get to the main point. So this is the Moondrop Starfield 2. They have updated their original Starfield because they keep undercutting themselves with very similar products. But even then, I think this will probably sound similar, if just a little similar to something else. But let's take a look at the back. And ooh, judging by the graph here, I can't read Chinese. But the target response they're going for is the gray dotted line, which you guys can barely see, but from what it seems like, it looks like it might be slightly different from the Starfields, leading more towards a brighter sound. They're gonna have a higher mid-tonality, it seems, compared to like the more V-shape, and even less so than from like, you know, the Arias, which these were, well, at least the first ones were often compared to, so I would expect these to be good for competitive shooter games, but we're gonna have to find out and take a listen to it. But first, let's crack open the box. Now, before opening the box, of course, we have to appreciate our beautiful waifu. If they didn't have a little waifu on this thing, their profits would plummet, I'd bet. Now, I don't have any good surfaces to put things on top of, so I'm just gonna put on top of this coffee box. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good coffee. Anyway, inside the box, you're gonna get the usual stuff. You're gonna get your IEMs, a carrying case, which inside contains other contents, such as your ear tips and your cabal, which, ooh, already, I can tell, look from the through, it looks pretty nice. We'll take a look at it a little bit. Just put these babies down right here. Anyway, after searching through the box, I found some your typical, well, you know, your typical paperwork and a beautiful earshot of the waifu's ear. So, you know, in case you're into that, you weirdos out there, you know who you are. Aside from paperwork, there is this thing here. So this is apparently used to adjust the sound, to give more bass to it, and to turn these guys from being essentially a more mid-treble focused sound to a bassy sound. So at least that's what it's supposed to do, but we'll find that out, huh? All right, let's keep it brief. Cable, not bad. Kind of looks pretty okay, well braided. It doesn't feel bad. It feels pretty sturdy. It's got some good, decent thickness and build to it. Metal hardware with matching colors of gold and whatnot from like the 3.5mm jack, as well as the splitter. And strangely enough, for some reason, I don't know why Moondrop keeps doing this, but the chin slider isn't metal. At least it doesn't feel metal. I could be wrong. It feels very light. Could be plastic. Oh, it might actually be. Oh, this actually might be metal. That's kind of nice. Anyway, it's matching, so that's nice. I like that. Moving it to the ends, of course, you're gonna get your ear hooks and your 2-pin connectors. So yeah, cable, nice looking cable. Feels good. Doesn't seem to tangle easily. Good stuff. So the IEMs of the Starfields 2 this time around look a little bit different from the ones. Granted, not that much different to be honest, but they go for a different design. And design-wise, I think they're trying to go more along like their other lines of stuff that they're releasing right now, like their Aria 2s kind of have an interesting design similarly. And if we look on the backside, you know, pretty much the same. It's got that form, which we're pretty much familiar with Moondrop's other stuff, and just like the RA2s from last time, the nozzle is removable as a little cap area. Whoop, I dropped it. The idea is so in case you ever lose or damage your nozzle, you can replace it really easily, and you'd have to buy those separately because this baby doesn't come with extra nozzles in case you need those. However, it did come with those little ports that you saw earlier in the little tiny baggie. Those will go right in there. That there is where you're going to cover with these little babies here, and it'll increase the bass, but we'll find that out in a little bit, huh? First, let's get this together so we can like get a good fit test, and I did notice these do kind of almost snap on like on the Aria 2, so it seems like that's what Moondrop's going to be doing with these when going forward. Alright, the fit of these guys is pretty good. I mean, it's not unlike the Moondrop Arias 2s, so the comfort's pretty good, and it's not too big. Looks actually kind of nice in the ear, like an accessory, which I guess some people would be kind of into, especially if you're streaming or something like that, in case you want to get that showing there. And I will say these do feel light. I don't know if they changed the metals, but they don't feel too heavy in my ear. Could be just the hooks though, because as I'm holding them here, I do feel some of the weight. But I guess that'll be subjective, depending on your fit and shape of your ear. So do bear that in mind that your mileage is going to vary for comfort, but if you can fit the old Arias or, you know, most of the other IEMs of regular typical sizes, I think you're going to be a-okay. Feels good, looks good. Okay, now let's talk about the sound for this guy and like its abilities in gaming and whatnot. So the sound of it, according to some other people, because I decided to cross-reference in case I'm crazy with like what I heard versus the box versus what other people heard. People seem to kind of agree with the box saying it's kind of like neutral, brightish. I think it's actually kind of like that, but less neutral. It still has some warmth to it. I don't know if I can call the bass neutral, so what that means means is there still is a good amount of bass where there's like a light boost to it to give you some oomph. And the reach into the sub bass, the lower bass, pretty good. Mid bass is okay, like, you know, it gets some decent punch, but it's not super strong. It's pleasant. I don't think it's flat though, so there is that about that. And this does still, you know, help the mids and the highs be brought out, so I do think those are a little bit forward, being very clear, very nice, very clean, I'd say. Having a good amount of detail to them, though I will say it sounds better in the upper ranges versus like the lower mids. I think it lacks a little bit of weight in the lower mids, but it's still okay. But the lower mids do feel kind of recessed because of how the upper mids feel more forward, if that makes sense. And this also goes into the highs, which have a really good higher up extension, so if you're kind of sensitive to really high sounds, you might not like this very much. And, you know, this is kind of like the old Starfields, the Starfields 1. Those also tended to be more on the bright side. This is like a much more refined Starfield. But I should mention that these things did come with little bass modules that you can like add into the little back, which is really annoying to put on. But if you do, they do get a warm sound signature and turn into a V shape essentially. Again, I'll get a lot more bass presence. The mid recession is going to be a little bit more than it was before, and it's still kind of a little bit brighter on the upper end, but it won't hurt horribly as much from what I've noticed. And, you know, it just becomes a more fun sound signature. But, you know, then there's also like the aspect of soundstage and imaging for both ends of the spectrum. So without the little modules, I think the soundstage is pretty nice. It's pretty wide. It's got a good amount of width to it. Depth is pretty okay. Height is just okay. I never expected much from height these days, especially out of IEMs. It's just not very high, but at least there's some sense of height, which is good for gaming. Precision on these guys, I think, is pretty damn good because it has good sound separation. Something I did notice about this. Sound separation of these things is very good, and this helps with the imaging, allowing you to like kind of pinpoint where things are. And this is important in gaming, of course, so as you can imagine, they're going to be really good for competitive shooter games. Tracking people is pretty darn good just because of the way it sounds, with the more mid-forward kind of sound, with some bass to still add weight so you can still track those other sounds. And something I did notice is that when I did install little bass units in the little thingy, the soundstage didn't increase a whole bunch, but you still retained that imaging. I do think the sound separation was still pretty damn good, even if you had that added bass in case you want a more fun sound. And it didn't affect tracking too much. In fact, in some cases it did enhance it. It gave more weight to certain sounds, and certain footsteps and certain textures are brought out more, like certain kind of like areas where there's like dirt crunching. You're going to hear it a little bit more presently from like the lower end, but in places where the notes are a little on the higher side, so like if they're walking on concrete or like on metal, it's a little bit different. So that in that case I would prefer without little bass things. But if I were to like competitively game with these guys, personally I think you can like live with or without them, and it really depends on like what games you're playing. But for me personally, for the bass bits, I usually put it in there for music, I'd say, and when I game I take them out. But I will say I just have left them out because they're kind of small and really annoying to put in and take out, and there's always that slight fear of losing them. And since these are loaner units from Apos, thanks Apos, you know, I can't lose their stuff. This is gonna go to someone else, and if I lose those units, someone is gonna be left without them. But you know, that's just a logistical thing. Back onto the review. As you can imagine, the sound for this guy is actually also really good for non-competitive games as well because of the tuning. It's very revealing, it's very clean, and you still get bass to give weight. The sound of the world is still large for an IEM, mind you. My IEMs have a small soundstage, but for IEM, I do think it is larger than average, and that's great. And it utilizes the sound very well with the sound separation, so that makes a more realistic, more immersive experience, which makes it very enjoyable. And in these cases, I do think having the little bass units enhances that experience, so there is that. But you know, if you switch it back and forth between the games, I can imagine it being very annoying to take out the little things and possibly losing them. But even when I was playing without the little bass units installed, I still found games that are like non-competitive, more open world, still very fun and immersive. I just think it sounds more immersive with the little rubber bits installed in there. So you know, there is that. Now for $110, I think the sound quality punches above its belt, which is great. So it's definitely well worth the money. And as you've heard earlier, it is really good for gaming, whether you're doing non-competitive or competitive gaming. Though, you know, and this is with like the bass units or not. Though I would prefer personally to play without them for competitive games and with them for non-competitive games. But it is annoying to take them in and out. That's just some, you know, gripe to it. I like the concept, I like the idea, I like how it works. I don't like the application of it because it's a little annoying and there's that fear of losing the bits and having to buy more of them. Now, of course, then brings the question that's probably bigger on your minds if you watch my other videos. Is this worth it? compared to the Aria 2s which are out, which are better than the Aria 1s for gaming? That depends. I want to personally say yes, because the sound quality overall is better. You can hear the details better. But in the actual like situation of like competitive gaming, that doesn't really matter as much. So if you're a competitive gamer, like the upgrade is very incremental to the point where you'd game just as good in either one, to be honest. But if you're like a non-competitive gamer and you like that immersive experience, I do think the extra details this brings and the sound quality it brings will make that immersive experience even better. And if you're going to be using this for more than just competitive games, then they're definitely worth it. But if you are a pure competitive shooter gamer, then it wouldn't be an upgrade from the Aria 2s, or even like, you know, some other IEMs you may be using as your primary that is focused on giving you the sound you need to find in competitive shooter games, albeit maybe perhaps at a lower quality sound, but it still gives you information that you need, because, you know, games and your requirements of what you're looking for vary for sound. That's just kind of how things go. But for me personally, being a guy who uses just everything, so I would be using these for gaming, for non-competitive, for competitive, as well as listening to music, watching movies. These things are a really good all-arounder. However, I should warn you, if you are high sensitive, you're afraid of like those really high or upper notes, you may not enjoy them as much. Those are probably the only people who should probably avoid these guys. But for everybody else, I think these would be pretty good. Unless you're a bass head, I guess, and I mean, I guess for bass heads you can just put in the modules, but it is annoying. But I don't know, I just think it's annoying. So I wish that was implemented better, but that's all I got for today. So yeah, that's all I got. These are great. Moondrop's doing great. We got Arios 2, we have Starfield 2. I want to see the Kato 2. I don't know how those are going to sound, but it better be good. It's going to make me real sad, because it's probably going to put my variations out of their misery. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. See you guys next time.